I'm Jonathan Moz. I'm the publisher and editor of bikeportland.org, which is a daily bike news website. First and foremost, I'd never been in a major hurricane or an event like that, so I had a little fear in terms of not knowing what to expect. Once I realized I was going to be safe and fine, I was really interested to see what would happen to the city once the transit was completely shut off. I was really interested to see what New Yorkers would do on their bikes right after the storm. So I went out just the morning after on my bike and went out to see what people were doing. In the following day, once people switched from, hey, what had happened, and they switched more into okay, we've got to deal with this is serious stuff. I mean, huge swath of Manhattan was without electricity, and there were a lot of people without food. So things were getting more and more serious. And a lot of people that owned cars, they went right to their cars and they started trying to drive them to work, and it created these massive, massive traffic jams. Day-long gridlock where nobody moves at all. I mean, that's what happened. Manhattan was stopped, and you definitely saw bike advocates and people that have bikes and understand, have networks built around bikes and stuff like that. They sort of swung into action because a lot of people were turning to bikes just to get to work, because they basically had a free holiday day after the storm, and then it was like, hey folks, you got to get to work somehow. So there was this massive move toward people walking and biking across the major bridges. And I actually met a woman who never biked into Manhattan, who was had to get to work and didn't have a way to get there. So she was on a bike and joined one of these groups and figured out the route, went over the bridge and the whole thing, and ended up being great. The walking and biking paths were jam-packed. It was amazing. It was almost gridlock on the bridges from people walking and biking. And there was a group of people that were down in the Lower East Side, which is really hard hit because they didn't have any electricity. They had about 4 or 5 feet of water on some of their streets down there. And there was a group of activists actually, they built a lot of these bicycle generators so that they built these bike stands where the rear wheel locks into, and then as you pedal the bike, it turns a drum which is connected to a bunch of equipment that creates electricity. So they set up these charging stations with a tandem bike and actually 2 or 3 bikes going at once, and they could power dozens and dozens of cell phones off these bikes. So they went out and flyered the neighborhood saying free cell phone charging at this corner. And a neighborhood where there wasn't a lot of mingling between these two communities, where you have the Lower East Side residents and then you had these activist guys who they were telling me previously never really hung out that much. Well, now they were all friends, and this corner was mobbed. This street was just mobbed with people wanting to get their cell phones charged, hopping up on the bikes themselves to create the electricity. While just across the street you'd see the big Con Edison utility guys just digging stuff up and trying to figure out what the heck to do. You had these people creating electricity with these bike-powered generators. There's not as many cargo bikes in New York City as there is in Portland, but there are some, and I saw one old gentleman who had filled up his cargo bike. It's like an extra cycle with the big bins in the back. He'd filled it up with a bunch of food and vegetables that he got from a food market that was having to just put the food out, basically out in the trash. So this gentleman I found on his cargo bike had a bunch of veggies, and he was just going around to different neighborhoods and passing it out to folks that needed it. So even though they didn't have sort of the same bike network set up like we do here, it was just a natural thing for them to use their bicycles to kind of to deliver supplies. I guess one thing that comes to mind is just how resilient and flexible using bicycles is in these situations, and how they quickly set up some sort of rapid bus lines when the subways went down. But even those, people were waiting outside for quite a long time. There's massive lines. I heard about fights waiting to get on the bus. The gas part of this is another big takeaway from New York City. It was really amazing to see. There were gas lines. There were police policing these gas lines of people. It was getting really heated. People were lining up with gas cans. And it just reinforced for me just how resilient the bicycle is, and the fact that disaster or no, gas or no, you can do that the same on a bike. So it just really reinforced what a key role bikes can play and how important they can be after disaster.
Receive alerts, critical texts, calls, or emails. Sign up at publicalerts.org.